What if your body had a built-in glucose vacuum cleaner that runs while you sit? Sounds like clickbait, right? Now, we know that walking burns glucose and can be a great strategy to bring down stubborn high blood sugars after a meal. But what can you do if you're stuck in a stressful work meeting, or nursing a baby, or just plain don't want to go for a walk? What I'm about to share with you is how I hit 100% time in range for the last 7 consecutive days with an average glucose of 120 milligrams per deciliter, just changing one thing in my day. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what I'm doing while sitting here right now to balance my blood sugars after eating pancakes for breakfast. In fact, today I am going to show you how the tiny endurance engine muscle in your calf, often overlooked and forgotten, can fix your blood sugars in a pinch, and how activating it in a very specific way can literally cut your post-meal blood sugar spike in half without doing a workout. That's not hype, right? And this is what researchers saw in a controlled lab study. And I'm going to walk you through all of it. Why this tiny and often overlooked muscle can burn blood sugar endlessly. Now, the exact seated move that drops spikes in blood sugar by about 52% and reduced insulin needs by about 60%, we are going to cover that, and how I use something I call activity impact ratios to keep my blood sugars in range even while training for an Ironman, staying close to non-diabetic numbers. And I want to cover a bonus, how even the worst diet is no match for this one simple glucose trick, like the last time I had 2 burgers and ice cream for dessert and still stayed stable and had in-range blood sugars after the meal. So stick with me. This is going to be a masterclass. And if you have diabetes, pre-diabetes, I have type 1 diabetes, or if you just want to be stable with your energy, your longevity, you don't want to miss this. And if you don't know who I am yet, my name is Vegte. I'm a certified master fitness trainer and nutritionist. I actually live with type 1 diabetes as well, and I'm a best-selling author on the topic. As an Ironman athlete, I've experimented with a lot of these concepts myself, and today I want to break down the mysteries and frustrations behind blood sugar spikes and how to handle them and avoid them if you can. So ultimately, if you want science-backed ways to better support blood sugars without requiring a crazy workout, this one's for you. All right. Now, ultimately, I want to cover a few things on screen. If you're listening, then know that the better version of this is on YouTube. But let's start with the basics. The soleus is one of your 2 big calf muscles. It sits underneath the gastrocnemius, right, which is the muscle you see when somebody flexes their calf. The soleus runs from just below your knee down to your heel, where it merges into the Achilles tendon. That's the sciencey part of it, right? But here's what makes it special. It's packed with slow twitch muscle fibers, what physiologists call type 1 fibers, right? So roughly about 80 to 90% of its fibers are slow twitch, and that's more than almost any other muscle in your body. Now, slow twitch or type 1 fibers are endurance muscle fibers. They're designed to burn fuel slowly and efficiently, hour after hour, without fatiguing. That's why the soleus is called the endurance muscle. And if most muscles in your body are like sports cars, quick bursts, right? They run out of gas fast. The soleus is like a diesel locomotive. It's slow, steady, and it just keeps chugging along. So when we think about muscles, there are aerobic and anaerobic muscles, and more focused on mitochondrial function are your slow twitch type muscles. So the soleus is meant to keep going and going and going, built for endurance. Right now, versus that to a back muscle, a bicep, a pectoral, where you're meant to flex it immediately. The immediate contraction is more of a type 2 muscle fiber that is meant for immediate response. It uses stored glycogen instead of an aerobic function. We can get into the science later. If you want more of that, let me know in the comments. But endurance sports like triathlon, this muscle is so central to many Ironman finishers and their strategies, and ultimately what carries them through the race, that they get the Ironman tattoo on their calf, symbolizing the engine that literally carried them through the miles. Now, I haven't gotten my Ironman tattoo yet, so if you know of any ideas on how to tie in type 1 diabetes or my T1D company, FTF Warrior, drop a comment. I need help like before I put something permanent on my body, it would be my first and maybe only tattoo. So I need to think about it before I do anything crazy like that. But that is a consideration as well. Now, looking at the soleus, the calf muscle in general, as an endurance muscle, how does this tie in to type 1 diabetes, right? And this is where science gets really fascinating. Ultimately, most muscles, when they contract, burn glycogen, the stored carbohydrate inside of your muscles. When you eat food, it gets converted into glucose. Food, carbs, and proteins. Fat doesn't do this. But carbs and proteins convert into glucose, which is stored in your muscle as muscle glycogen. And when you work out, you're using that stored muscle. So if you imagine your muscles like a sponge, it soaks up glucose to store for later. And when you work out and contract the muscle tissue, you squeeze that sponge. You use the stored glucose that's inside there, or in other words, the sponge is squeezed. And this is also why you see insulin sensitivity improved after a workout, because now that the sponge has been squeezed, it wants to soak back up the glucose to store extra energy in the form of muscle glycogen for the next time that you want to flex it, which is why right now I can flex my muscle without warning. That is stored energy. It is always available, assuming, of course, you're not starving yourself or in the middle of an extremely long fast, right? Or having just worked out or just completed an Ironman. But secondarily, you've also got energy or glycogen stored in your liver as well. And when that stored glycogen runs low, muscle and liver, you fatigue. That's the wall that marathoners hit, right? But the soleus, it plays by different rules. In fact, in a landmark study at the University of Houston, researchers had people perform very specific seated movement for hours on end. They took muscle biopsies and found that even after more than 4 hours, the soleus had barely touched its glycogen stores, the energy inside of the muscle that we were just talking about, the sponge analogy, right? Instead, it was pulling almost all of its energy from blood glucose and fats in circulation. So while other muscles are essentially raiding their pantry, burning through their own storage first, the soleus is like ordering DoorDash, right? It's fueled straight from the bloodstream in real time. And here's the kicker. This wasn't just a little blip. Even after 130 minutes, even after 270 minutes, over 4 hours, the soleus kept burning glucose and fat from the blood with no fatigue and almost no reliance on its own glycogen. This is insane. I want you to pause and just think about that for a second. Over 4 hours of exercise, and it's barely even touched the stored glycogen because it's been soaking up glucose and fats from the bloodstream. Glycogen use after 4.5 hours, only about 4% of activity energy. Energy expenditure roughly doubled compared to sitting still, all from just a single muscle that represents around 1% of your body mass. That's tiny, right? And this is why we say the soleus can burn glucose endlessly. It doesn't hit the glycogen wall. It just keeps going, keeps sipping from the bloodstream, right? And a fun fact for you, you've likely seen the impact when going for a walk, especially if you wear a CGM like me that monitors your glucose and shows you trends and patterns in real time. It has a lowering effect on blood sugars when we go for a walk. What you might not know, though, is that in recent studies, they've seen a strong correlation between walking around 3,400 steps and having a similar impact on blood sugars to an equivalent of around 1 unit of insulin. Now, obviously, not meant to replace insulin, and this isn't medical advice. Insulin plays an important role in our body, much more than just the transport of glucose from your bloodstream into storage, into muscle and liver and adipose tissue. However, it's still pretty cool to keep in the back pocket, right? For when your next stubborn post-meal high blood sugar that you encounter comes around, right? And I do use this almost daily, sometimes even just a walk around the block, which is maybe a third of a mile for me, right? Is enough to push blood sugars in the right direction. And if you are a walker like me, comment the word walker. I want to see who else is out there. And if you're feeling fancy, add how many steps you get in a day on average. For me personally, I probably hit around 5,000 to 6,000 steps a day, but I know some of you are quite different, and some of you are overachievers, which I respect, but yeah, I could probably improve. Anyways, so what happens when you harness this? In a 75-gram glucose tolerance test, the same sugar drink that doctors use to diagnose diabetes Participants who did this seated contraction pattern and used their soleus muscle, which they call it the soleus push-up, saw their post-meal glucose spike cut by about 52% compared to sitting still. And the amount of insulin their body needed to handle that sugar was reduced by about 60%. I want you to think about that. 1% of your muscle mass made the whole body behave like it had twice the insulin sensitivity. Now, here's what's wild about that. There's no known drug, no supplement, not even most workouts have shown that level of glucose reduction while sitting. This is unique. This is insane. And this is amazing. I really hope you're grasping this with me. So how do you actually do this, right? So step one, you sit tall in a chair with your feet flat on the floor. And I was doing it at the beginning of this video if you caught it. Step two, keep the ball of your foot on the floor. Step three, lift your heels slowly, then let it drop down passively. Don't stomp, don't tense up, just natural smooth up, natural smooth down, right? Now, step four, find a rhythm that you can keep going for 10 to 20 minutes. It almost looks like you're fidgeting, right? But you're not. You're actively activating the soleus in a way that keeps it engaged continuously. So I want you to think about this like metabolic windshield wipers, right? So heel up, heel down, swish, 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 swish. Every sweep clears glucose from your bloodstream. Think about that. It's just constant progress being made little by little. It's not going to drop your blood sugars 100 points in 10 minutes, but just chipping away at the high blood sugar that you might be stuck on. And it gives you something to do, some action to take other than waiting for insulin to hit, right? Whether you took it manually or your pancreas is still functioning. So let me share a story with you, actually. One of my private T1D clients let me know this morning that she tested this out. So we talk about these types of things in our private coaching, and we experiment, we share data, we convert and really improve our glucose in any possible way that we can. And she let me know in today's coaching call that she had tested this at a concert while sitting down. So she did Soleus push-ups at about 100 per minute. So, bouncing. And it was after a meal. She had blood sugars that were becoming higher by the minute. And she was like, okay, it's going to go out of range. I'd rather that not happen. Oh, that's right. Matt told me about this Soleus push-up thing. So she started trying it. She found that for every 5 minutes of Soleus push-ups, her blood sugar dropped about 6 points, measured, of course, in milligrams per deciliter. And the effect was almost immediate. She's watching her CGM, right? And as soon as she started, her CGM trend line bent down and kept her 100% time in range when she otherwise would have had a high from her meal during the concert, right? When she stopped, it leveled out. She also noticed that if she stood up or added a little bit of weight to it, it was like leaning forward, or going on a stepper. I joked in the call that what if I put my daughter on my lap who's almost 4 years old? I'm like, you just add weight to your Soleus push-ups, right? And she said it was actually even more powerful of an impact. Now, standing does bring in more muscles like the gastrocnemius, so the mechanics do change a bit, but the principle is clear. The Soleus has real trackable power to lower blood sugar on demand. Especially powerful if you can't get up, if you're stuck in a meeting, stuck on the couch, whatever, or if you just don't want to go for a walk, right? It gives you a power in different scenarios where you might not have had it before. And that's the kind of experiment you can do at home with your CGM, which makes it even more powerful and takes away the excuses. So let's zoom out on this though. We've known for years that walking after meals help blunt spikes. Right? Studies show that walking for even 10 to 20 minutes soon after eating can significantly reduce your glucose peak. The key, though, is starting right after the meal and not waiting an hour to see if it goes up to 200, 300 plus, right? But what's the difference between walking and the Soleus push-up? Think of it like, think of walking like your sump pump, right? In San Diego, we don't really have these, but I know of them. Your sump pump, it moves a lot of blood sugar, but you have to get up and go outside. The Soleus push-up is like your under the desk pump. When it works when you're stuck in a meeting or on an airplane, right? Or on a road trip or at a concert. These two aren't competitors. They're complementary. Walking and SPUs, we'll call them, or the Soleus push-ups. Walk when you can. Do SPUs when you can't, right? It's just a new option. It's a new tool in your tool belt for managing blood sugars. But let's talk about practical application. So for type 2 diabetes or for prediabetes, this is an incredible way to improve insulin sensitivity without strenuous workouts. Now, for type 1 diabetes like me, you need to know that contractions plus insulin on board add up. Okay, if you've just taken a bolus and you add SPU or Soleus push-ups, your insulin will work faster and your Soleus is soaking up glucose. That can be great, but it can also mean you're going to go low if you're not careful, right? So I always recommend keep carbs handy, reduce corrections when needed. Like, be smart about it. Don't go do Soleus push-ups for 4.5 hours without checking your CGM or your insulin on board. You might find that it works a little bit too well, right? But that's the key here, is that it works. Secondly, this is meant to be an assist, not a replacement when it comes to insulin volume and insulin timing, right? So this is where my activity impact ratios or errors come in that I talk to my clients about. I measure how much each activity typically lowers my blood sugar per minute. So my client measured 6 blood sugar points dropped per 5 minutes. That was one of her errors that she now came up with. And, for example, like for me, as an Ironman athlete, I track things like walking, cycling, swimming, running, and now Soleus push-ups as well. All different impacts that can be calculated with precision. So when I'm training for Ironman, I use these ratios along with carbs and insulin timing and adjustments to stay in range as close to non-diabetic numbers as possible without any risk of the what ifs that used to plague me, right? And I used to be terrified of lows during exercise and rebound highs afterwards. Now I know it's just a calculation, or as we refer to with our private T1D clients, a personalized blood sugar formula, right? In my book, The Blood Sugar Freedom Formula, we talk all about this, how to set those up, how to begin to identify these and set them up for more predictable, stable blood sugars, especially when considering things like insulin on board and the mysteries behind that. Truth be told, there are no mysteries. Every blood sugar has a reason. It's just up to us to put our diabetes detective hat on to figure it out, right? And so when we get these personalized blood sugar formulas in place, we get back that peace of mind and freedom to enjoy food, activities, more of life ultimately without sacrificing steady blood sugars. I know for me personally, I used to get spooked by unpredictable blood sugars, by the uncertainty that my endocrinologist used to tell me was just part of diabetes. Oh, that's just how it is. Stop trying so hard. The reality is that when you have certainty, when you have blood sugar formulas, you get your peace of mind back through certainty, through knowing it's going to be okay. This double arrows down drop is going to level out at 90 and it's going to stabilize, or it's not, and I need to take action early. I might treat a low blood sugar before it gets to a low blood sugar so that it never goes low, and I still do stabilize at 90. That's the goal, is predictability that gives us back our life, right? And if you want a start on how blood sugar formulas work and like the errors, the activity impact ratios, worksheets that I use, that sort of stuff, you can check out the link in the description for a walkthrough that I made just for you. It's free. It'll help you start mapping out your own responses, and I guarantee you it'll point you in the right direction towards more predictable blood sugars, especially if any of these things that I'm talking about today sound new. Now, here's the bigger picture. Sitting for hours tanks your metabolism. I know, I sit at this desk right here most of the day. Okay, this desk lifestyle is not healthy. The Soleus gives us a way to fight back while we sit, keeping glucose and triglycerides burning, keeping circulation moving. It's like brushing your teeth, right? You don't brush your teeth because your teeth hurt. You brush because it's a hygiene habit, a consistent habit in your daily routine that protects against issues from ever arising. See, Soleus push-ups are part of your metabolic hygiene habits. And I love the poetic side of this too. Like, the Soleus is the endurance muscle. It carries us through marathons and Ironmans. And now science shows it can carry us through the daily marathon of blood sugar management and modern sedentary lifestyle. So here's my challenge to you. Join the Soleus 7. All right. After your main meal, do 2 blocks of Soleus push-ups for 7 days, the next 7 days, starting today. Track your CGM before and after, gather data, be smart about it. All right, if you're sitting at 60 and you have insulin on board, that's not the right time to experiment with this. Be smart. But try it out when you have a stubborn high, when you've got nowhere else to go, you can't go for a walk. I want you to see the power behind this. Track your CGMs before and after, then come back here and comment Soleus with your results. I'll feature 3 of your overlays in the next exercise and T1D episode. All right, now remember, small muscle, big impact. The endurance muscle isn't just for races, it's for everyday life. All right, and if you found this helpful, check out the next video I've got for you queued up and hit subscribe before you leave, or else you might never see me again. I hope you enjoyed this one. Check the link in the description for that free training, and I'll see you in the next one. Keep up the fight.